Right, now joining us on the line is Chris Mains. He is the current chair of the London Lib Dems and the former leader of Bromley Council. He's standing to be a Liberal Democrat on the London Assembly. Chris, first things first, how are you?
Fine, thank you.
Thank you very much for joining us. Now, of course,
You're welcome.
as chair of the London Lib Dems, it's been a mixed time for the Lib Dems in London in recent years. Of course, the 2016 elections were disappointing. They went down from 2 Assembly members to 1. How do you think the Lib Dems can increase that to 2 or possibly even 3 this time around?
I think it's quite exciting that you're right, we should aim for 3, possibly 4. This time last year we had 1 Lib Dem council in London. We've now got 3. And we are beginning to get a bit more traction. Our stance on Brexit is very much in tune with many Londoners, and I think the other 2 parties have lots of internal problems.
As I mentioned at the start, Chris, of course, you were a councillor and leader of Bromley Council. Why did you feel now was the right time to pursue the London Assembly?
Because it is an exciting time for Lib Dems. We've got a mayor that's very quiet, doesn't appear to speak up on many of the big issues for Londoners, and we've had a fantastic member at the moment. I want to join her and see that we can increase the Lib Dem presence on the Assembly.
Now, these elections, as you mentioned, are kind of dominated by the mayor race. Of course, we do elect a London Assembly, but they are dominated by the kind of the top position. Lib Dems have 4 candidates who kind of already been announced for that position. Out of interest, as a candidate for the Assembly, will you be throwing your support behind any one of them?
No. Obviously, I've got views on each 4 of them. They'll all make good candidates, but it's not really for me to express a view as a candidate in the same selection and as chair of the region.
And in terms of Caroline Pidgeon, of course, she has been on the Assembly for a while now. She was the Lib Dem mayor candidate. Is your intention to work closely with her on the London Assembly? Because it seems that she'll get a kind of high preference on the vote as well.
I would imagine as incumbent, she certainly deserves a high vote. She works incredibly hard. It's incredibly effective. So yes, I'd like to work very closely. I do work very closely with her, and I'd like to continue that as a colleague on the Assembly.
The Lib Dems have, of course, increased their parliamentary representation in London. They won back Twickenham and Kingston. Obviously, Sir Vince Cable and Sir Edward Davey coming back into the fold. But what kind of certain areas of London are you really targeting where you think, as chair of the London Lib Dems, we can really kind of increase our vote there?
Well, in addition to Vince and Ed winning back their seats, we also took back control of the councils with quite large majorities. So there's been a real groundswell for us in South West London, doing very well in Merton as well. And there are pockets of Lib Dem support across London that we need to build on. Haringey, Southwark, and a lot of the smaller sort of villages within London are very Lib Dem-y, and we need to get our message out there, and our polling shows that there's huge potential for us to do very well.
Now, Chris, in terms of your candidacy, what changes do you want to see made to London? What would you try and implement on the GLA?
Well, the GLA's job is to hold the mayor to account, and so I want to do that very much, make sure that he is not just frittering away resources, and he needs to speak up on some of the big issues like knife crime and transport issues. We've had all these transport strikes, which is something we really need to get to grip with. But in addition to holding the mayor to account, I think it's an opportunity to raise some of our own policies. I'd be very keen for us to introduce a tourist tax to raise money from the 20 million visitors London gets to help invest in our infrastructure. I'd like to see us introduce a youth card, perhaps where we can put sort of £200, £250 on a card for young people to go to London venues so they can experience live music or theatre and performing arts or sports facilities. I think there's a good way of building up with a loyalty card which they get funds or credits on to ensure that they engage a lot more with some of the fantastic attractions around London. I'd like to see us do a lot more about making the city dementia-friendly. Dementia is one of those big sort of concerns that's growing. There's sort of nearly 100,000 people across London suffering, and they've got their carers. We can make things a lot easier for them London-wide. And the third role for an Assembly member is to represent the communities around London, raising the issues that concern them, helping them campaign on issues that affect them. So I think the Liberal Democrats are well positioned to do those 3 things.
You mentioned Sadiq Khan, and you described him as being kind of a quiet mayor. How do you assess how he's done?
I guess disappointing is really the best word for it. He got elected with a good majority, a lot of enthusiasm for a new mayor, But of course, we've had all these train strikes, affected a lot of people who commute on a daily basis. You don't really expect a Labour mayor to have to be struggling with the unions and trying to ensure that transport is running efficiently every day. That's a big issue. We've had a summer where, sadly, crime among young people has continued with gang and knife crime. He's very quiet on these issues. He needs to come stand up and articulate the concerns of Londoners and start putting some strategies into place to deal with these things.
Now, Chris, were you at the People's Vote March, which took place on Saturday?
I was. Fantastic turnout among Liberal Democrats and among Londoners.
What do you think the march itself achieved?
I think a lot of people have found it quite frustrating that the 48% of Remainers haven't had their voice heard. And this is an opportunity for the media to actually realise there's a lot of people out there who are very angry, very concerned about the future. I think Liberal Democrats were arguing that there should be a vote on the final deal 18 months ago. We were sort of voices in the wilderness then. But now more and more people are realising it is a solution to the deadlock that exists in Parliament. And when we do know if there's a deal, how good the deal is, if there's no deal, we ought to be going back to the people who originally were the people that got us here with the referendum, with a second referendum to ensure that people are happy with the outcome, the situation as it exists now.
If the first referendum was advisory and it was a binary choice, remain or leave, is there an argument to say the second referendum should be two different forms of leave?
I'd like to see a remain option there, because I think there's a lot of people that have seen that actually leave wasn't the vision that they expected. They were misled, and the repercussions of us leaving Europe is far greater than many people understood. And the sad thing is, of course, that the people that will suffer when the economy tanks will be the poorer people in society. And I find it amazing that we have a Labour Party that seem to be pursuing policies which will make poorer people poorer. And it's the vulnerable that get hit when our economy goes down, and they should be fighting to ensure that doesn't happen. And that means getting a good deal in Europe.
Now, Chris, you clearly think we should remain in the European Union and have a people's vote. If there was a people's vote and we accepted a deal, a no deal, or a deal that Theresa May comes back with, I mean, what would be the situation then? Would there be another referendum, or would that kind of settle the matter, in your opinion?
I think it would settle the matter in the next few months, but I think the next generation will want to be going back into Europe at some stage. I think people can understand as we go into the 21st century, there is a need for the nations to work together, and that's what the EU does.
Brilliant. And Chris, there's been some talk that the People's Vote up until the march on Saturday had been largely ignored by the media, that perhaps the BBC didn't cover it, there wasn't enough coverage across radio and TV. Are those kind of frustrations and concerns that you shared? I did. In the next few days we'll see whether the media have changed its perspective slightly. It's appearing to be a route out of the crisis the Prime Minister, or the cul-de-sac the Prime Minister seems to have got herself into. There are people in every political party now seeing that People's Vote is a way of dealing with the deadlock that exists. Well, Chris Mains, thank you very much for joining me, and good luck in your selection to be the Lib Dem candidate, or one of the Lib Dem candidates for the GLA. Thank you very much. Keep up the good work.